Good evening. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. And so if you have not gotten some water and a snack, please do so, because what we're going to talk about tonight is not only exciting, but riveting. And so I am Deborah Peoples. I am your council person from District 5, and I will tell you that along with the amazing city staff, we have been working very hard on the 25-26 budget. And so what you're going to hear tonight are information about the budget, but we also brought subject matter experts tonight here from the city of Fort Worth who can help answer your questions. Before we get started, I want to make sure that I introduce my two district directors, Selena Vasquez. Selena, will you raise your hand so everybody can see you? And Lisa Baker. And so I think most of you have already been in contact with them, but I want to thank the assistant city managers who are here tonight, and also our amazing police chief, Chief Ulrich. Thank you for being here. And before we get started, I want to introduce two of our commissioners are here. And so I want to introduce Commissioner Charles Edmonds, who is our go-to person on zoning. And there's Commissioner. And Commissioner Melinda Hamilton, who is our go-to person on the Parks Commission. So anyway, we have and so Commissioner Marvin Jose Diaz, who is on our aviation board, just walked in. So I want to thank all of you in advance for those of you who have offered yourself up for service. We are very interested in making sure that District 5 is not only represented well, but we put some of the best and the brightest on our commission. So if you're interested in a commission, we could talk about that afterwards, but just amazing things happening in District 5. And so I want you to understand the budget. We have a great film to kick off the 25-26. There are chairs up here. I know some of you hate to be on the front row, but here, come on. Don't worry about being on the front row. But I think you will want to see the highlights of the budgets. Hello, Donaldo. How are you, Mr. Elias? But also, our city manager, Jay Chopper, could not be with us tonight. He is in Lubbock working hard for us, but we got the best person. We got the best with Christiane Simmons, who is with our labs and who is going to walk us through some things. If you have questions, I would ask that you let Christiane get started, and then before we ask questions, but we are happy. The reason the whole team is here tonight is to answer all of your questions. So without further ado, we're going to show the budget, and I'm going to turn it over to Christiane.
Thanks. We are going to start with a little video. As the council member mentioned, if somebody can help me cue the video, that would be great. This is fiscal year 26 budget highlights. And so you'll kind of get a big picture, and then we'll go through some of those highlights in the detail in the following presentation.
Fort Worth reflects smart, strategic growth, benefiting from a fast-growing economy, safe and clean neighborhoods, and a high quality of life for all residents. This year, we reached a historic milestone, 1 million residents strong. With that growth comes opportunity to invest wisely and plan sustainably for the future. For fiscal year 2026, the city is proposing a $3.09 billion budget, including a $1.1 billion general fund, focused on 5 city council priorities: community safety, infrastructure, community investment, economic development, and responsible growth. We are enhancing community safety by adding neighborhood police officers, providing full-year funding for our brand-new EMS service, and launching a new emergency management and communications department. And just as safety is essential, so is the infrastructure that keeps our city moving. We're prioritizing street maintenance and 2 major water treatment facility projects, while strengthening staffing to ensure crucial infrastructure projects are delivered on target. Our neighborhoods remain at the heart of our plan, supported by strengthening the priority repair and neighborhood improvement programs, expanding the mobile toolshed program to assist more homeowners, and adds resources to our animal shelters. By strengthening the places we live, we also lay the foundation for a thriving local economy. To boost economic growth, we're launching a small business development program and upgrading the Will Rogers Complex and Convention Center. We're delivering for today and planning for tomorrow. This is reflected by updating service fees for water, stormwater, solid waste, and environmental protection to improve flood mitigation and ensure sustainable operations. And through PAYGO funding, a small but powerful portion of your property tax, we're increasing investment in street and park maintenance. Over the past decade, Fort Worth has kept budget growth in check, thanks to consistent tax rate reductions. The proposed tax rate of 67 cents is a decrease from last year. The typical household with a homestead exemption will pay less in city taxes this year. Out of the 67-cent property tax rate, over 52 cents funds operations and maintenance, and 14 cents goes towards debt. We maintain a fiscally responsible strategy and a strong credit rating, enabling the city to fund upcoming bond programs. The City Council will review the budget throughout August, with a final vote on September 16th.
All right. Shout out to communications for that video. I feel like we've gotten better about our video comms. You guys are so encouraging. I love that on a weeknight. Well, thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how much city staff appreciates your engagement. This is, believe it or not, I don't know if this is encouraging or discouraging, but this is a good turnout for a weeknight budget meeting. We've been doing these all over this city. And so thank you in District 5 for showing up for a budget meeting. We do have a lot of city staff here, and that I hope really communicates to you how much city staff really values your input and wants to engage with you, not just on budget, but year round. My name is Christiane Simmons, as Councilmember People mentioned, and my role at the city is Chief Transformation Officer. I oversee the work of the Fort Worth Lab, which is, among other things, the group that develops and manages the city's budget. So we're like living and breathing budget all the time. After September 16th, when hopefully Council passes our budget, we will pretty much immediately start on next year's budget. And so we love the budget. We have a number of budget staff here, and you'll hear from another staff member here in a bit. So thanks again for being here. I do tend to pace a little just to make the cameramen have to go back and forth a bit. You good? Okay, good. We are streaming this for people who maybe couldn't make it. We've done that in every district. So when we do get to questions and answers, we'll probably have a microphone passing around and we'll let you use the mic. Okay. So getting to the meat of our presentation tonight, we're going to start just kind of with some high-level themes. So obviously there's themes that kind of become the story of every budget year, and sometimes they're the same, and sometimes they vary from year to year. So something that's been consistent over the last few years is really the intense population growth that the city is going through, and you're very well aware of that as residents of the city. And so with that kind of growth, we hit 1 million residents in July of 2024, adding about 20,000 people a year. That comes with opportunity and also a lot of complexity. And so it's kind of a whole balancing act and trade-off conversations as we build the operating and capital budgets, of which you'll see both tonight. Something that was a little different this year was the evolving property tax landscape. So the city sits in 4 appraisal districts, but the primary one is Tarrant. And so some of you may know that Tarrant Appraisal District adopted a reappraisal plan this year that was a little different than what we'd seen before. The main change was that they would reappraise residential property with a homestead exemption only every other year. And with property tax being the biggest source of city revenue, we just weren't exactly sure what that would do to our values. I mean, we kind of know what their goal is for your values, but when it comes to rate setting, as far as the property tax rate and sort of the revenue that we levy from that rate, we just didn't know what our existing growth would look like with those every other year reappraisals. So that was just something a little unique this year, and you'll get to see some of how that turned out. With a new city manager in the seat, we really focused a lot on fiscal responsibility. Now, don't get me wrong, like we try to always focus on fiscal responsibility, and it's certainly very important to the council. But with Jay Chapa being new in his role, not new to the city necessarily, but new to his role, he wanted to take a really surgical approach to understand sort of what was in each department's budget in the years that he'd been away. He wanted to catch up, and because of our modeling about constrained revenues from the appraisal district, he also wanted to constrain from the beginning instead of like waiting till the end and then trying to make cuts quickly. And so one thing he did really early on was he had departments cut their budgets by 1%. He allowed departments to decide where those cuts occurred, but that was just kind of an example of tightening the belt early in the process due to our expectations around constraint. Every year with the budget, we also look at fee increases. Sometimes it's not increases, but often it is fee increases. And we do have a couple of redesigned rates and fee increases that you'll see in tonight's budget. Those are due to a number of reasons, but typically capital planning and long-term sustainability of a fund or a service. And so we'll talk through some of those. And then related to growth, a couple of things. We use a portion of our property tax rate to cash fund capital maintenance. We call that portion of the rate pay-go, so pay as you go. So instead of issuing debt for like street maintenance and park maintenance, instead we pay that with cash through that dedicated portion of the property tax rate. Pay-go. So we knew that we didn't want to decrease the pay-go budget or the pay-go portion of the tax rate. And then similarly, we also didn't want to reduce the portion of the tax rate that's dedicated to debt. Because debt preserves our, bond capacity for big capital projects. So those were two levers that we really didn't want to pull. So this budget year, this was my, first and a half budget year with the city in this role. And this was not a year like we've had even a couple years ago where we were adding a lot of new positions or like really looking at increases in service. This was more about what are our core services, what are we maintaining, leaning into, and maybe like leaning out of or reducing. So in this budget, what you'll see is that we were able to sustain high service levels for public safety, because we hear that consistently. We don't want to reduce police and fire. This is also the first year of EMS coming into the city for fiscal year 26. We also wanted to provide additional pay-go for streets. That's kind of the number one thing we hear in addition to public safety. And I don't know that District 5 is any different on those two issues than anybody else. So there's some consistency there, although other things can vary widely. Streets and public safety. And then we also look at community investment. And so things like the neighborhood improvement program or priority repair programs, we wanted to look at our levels of investment on that priority as well. So I'm going to go through the major milestones by priority. So some of you may know this, but City Council has adopted strategic priorities. They're fairly broad categories, so you can fit a lot of things in each priority. But this budget year is the first time that they've actually had these priorities. They were adopted last year. And so we want to make sure that every resource that we appropriate is tied to one or more of these priorities. So having said that, we like to sort of organize our presentation and show you investments per priority. So here's some highlights for community safety. So I mentioned EMS. So many of you might know, and as residents that are engaged, you might have really been paying attention to some of these conversations. We went live on July 1st with EMS. So it used to be MedStar, now it's the city through the fire department. Next year is the first full year of funding that service. And so we've built the best model we can from all the data we have with MedStar and bringing them under the city's umbrella. So that's kind of thing number one that ate up a lot of the growth in the budget. The second thing is not so much new, but it's more of a reorganization consolidation. We established a new department in fiscal year 26. I actually saw a story about this today, I think, in the media, emergency management and communications. And so this is consolidating resources that deal with emergency management. So things like, if you think about World Cup planning or a storm, that kind of thing, but also 911, so emergency communications. So those two groups already existed in the city through the Office of Emergency Management and police and fire. They're now kind of put together under a very targeted initiative to really improve a lot of that. So that is an exciting milestone. And then On the police side, there are a couple of things. The things we hear most about and like to talk most about are on the CCPD side of things, and we'll talk about CCPD in a bit. But they added additional neighborhood police officers, so NPOs. I'm sure a number of you know your NPO and love your NPO. We hear that a lot. The police department did a study of all the beats that the police cover all over the city. They hadn't done one in a while. And as you can imagine, when there's a lot of growth, you kind of have to rebalance a lot of that. So they did that and finished it earlier this year, and that led to the need for additional NPOs. So there are 8 in the fiscal year 26 budget being spread around the city. And then school resource officers, we partner with the school districts that are within the city of Fort Worth, and we did have a school or a couple of schools that requested additional SRO support. We split those officers with the school districts 50-50, and so we were able to do that in next year's budget too. So aside from public safety, another high priority is infrastructure. And I mentioned street maintenance being a priority in this budget. So we increased the investment last year, and we're doing that again this year. So when I talk about pay-as-you-go capital, that's where a lot of the street maintenance is funded from, and we did increase that budget in fiscal year 26. There's been ongoing council conversation that's kind of ebbed and flowed if you've paid attention over the last, 12 to 18 months about a street maintenance fee. And there are some people who are like very for that, and some people are like, I don't want a fee. But council is interested in exploring again what that might look like, who would pay it, what the structure of that would be, that kind of thing. So this budget also appropriates some funding to look at what that kind of a fee would look like, what we would get for that fee, and how it would contribute to closing our gaps on street maintenance. So it's not being recommended for implementation now, but it's being recommended for study. And then on the capital plan, this might not be something that necessarily you think about day to day, but if you ever looked at a capital project and thought why is it taking a long time? A couple of departments this year recommended bringing some capital project delivery services in-house that are sometimes done by consultants. So sometimes we contract out for engineering or inspections, and the city feels in some instances that we could do that more efficiently with employees and less expensively with employees. And so we're trying that for fiscal year 26 to see if we can keep projects moving at a good clip. And then there are a couple of really big water projects. So when we talk about water, you'll see, but many of you know water is not just a city department, they're a regional utility. And so they have some significant capital outlay in fiscal year 26, including Mary's Creek and Eagle Mountain Water Treatment Plant. Okay, community investment is what you may think of as sometimes housing, neighborhood services, but it really encompasses a lot. The first thing here is there is a program through Neighborhood Services called the Priority Repair Program, and it is a popular program. It's really meant to keep homeowners in the homes that they own when they have an emergent situation that maybe they can't pay for, like think about an AC repair or something, where it puts them in a challenging situation. That's an existing program, but we've increased our investment in that program by about 25%. So it went from $2 million to $2.5 million in fiscal year 26 budget. And we're excited about that because we have a lot of demand for that program. We got a new code director over the last year, and he brought an interesting idea from Arlington, which is the city he came from. He's in the back too, so wave your hand, Brian. Brian's here. You can ask him all your code questions. The mobile tool shed is the program, and we piloted it in a couple of departments this year. A couple of neighborhoods this year, and it's what it sounds like. It's meant to decrease code violations because you don't have the equipment. And so you can reserve the equipment to come, and it might be a lawnmower or a weed eater or something. Again, we've seen some demand for that program, so we'd like to increase our expansion there. On the animal services side, we added some contractual services for some of the positions that we have that have a lot of turnover. So as you can imagine, working in the animal shelter can be challenging, especially for like a kennel technician, for instance, and the kinds of things they deal with. So we don't want to lapse in services when those positions turn over quickly. So in this budget, we've increased the investment for temporary labor to kind of fill those gaps. So we're excited about that as well. We're continuing the neighborhood improvement program to the tune of one neighborhood a year. And then finally, we have a library opening in the far northwest part of the city. It's opening in 2027 as far as the budget year, like late 2026. But at the end of this budget year, we have to hire the people and staff it. And so we're counting that as a win for the fiscal year 26 budget because we're going to hire the staff for it. Economic development is another council priority. In the video mentioned, we are launching a small business development program. You may have heard some of this over the summer at the council level. We talked a lot about this. But we're expanding the partnership with not just the Fort Worth Chamber, but also the Metropolitan Black Chamber and the Hispanic Chambers of Commerce to lean into that small business development program with their various expertise and relationships. We're also refreshing our economic development strategic plan. So that's it's a document that really guides our economic development strategies. We're bringing on a new director in just a few weeks, so we thought this would be a good idea to sort of revisit all of that. And then there are big investments in fiscal year 26 in Will Rogers and the Convention Center. So those have been planned and are, especially the Convention Center is a really big capital investment in fiscal year 26. And then we just continue to look at ways to incentivize business to come to Fort Worth. And then finally, responsible growth. This is kind of like a catch-all priority where we could put a number of things in responsible growth, but here are just a couple of highlights. So some of you, again, as engaged folks, you may have been involved in some of the comprehensive plan conversations over the last year. We've done some community forums. The comprehensive plan is kind of the long-range plan for the city. It covers lots of different department initiatives, but it's about, land use and what do you want to see Fort Worth looking like in 2050. And so this budget, we're in the middle of that, and so we've continued that investment into next year so we can get that plan finished. Not as exciting of an item, but for us, it's exciting because it increases service levels or at least maintains them. We have a fleet and equipment backlog a little bit. It's hard to keep up as your fleet grows to really turn vehicles over in a timely manner. And so we've added some funding to replace vehicles and equipment. It's not quite enough to replace all the ones that are eligible, but we're trying to take a bite out of it incrementally. And then I didn't talk much about workforce initiatives, but the city is in the middle of a pay study, and so not for civil service, but for most other job classifications that are not civil service. We're doing a comprehensive look at the pay, the competitiveness, the job titles and classifications, particularly with some of our positions that are really hard to fill or have a lot of attrition. We're kind of wondering, why. We want to stay competitive with the Metroplex, the private sector where appropriate. And so we're in the middle of that now. That was budgeted last year, but we expect to start seeing some results from that study in the middle of next year. So we have a small bucket that's designated for maybe implementing some of the things we learn first in that process, some of council and city management's priorities. And then we'll talk a little bit more about fee structure as we go. So I'm going to talk quickly about property tax, and then I'm going to give you a break from me and let you hear from Christy, who's another budget staff member. So property tax, biggest revenue source in the city, in the general fund, really funds all of our operations and our pay-as-you-go capital and our debt service in the general fund. Last year, our values, taxable values across those 4 appraisal districts that I mentioned were $121.9 billion. And again, we weren't really sure what to expect with our existing values because of the TAD reappraisal plan. And so when we got our values, we grew a bit more than we thought. We can capture 3.5% of existing growth. But in some cases, we were modeling it mostly flat. But you can see in the first row of where the little green arrow is, our existing values grew about 3.4%. Now, a lot of that is commercial, but that was existing growth. And then the new construction, 2.5%, that's a pretty good number for us. It's been 2 to 2.5%, 3% over the last few years, so that one's pretty steady. And so all that being said, our fiscal year 26 taxable value is $129 billion. So you may have seen in the video our recommended tax rate 67 cents. That's per $100 valuation. And this tax rate's the same for everybody, residents, businesses, every property owner. It's a 1/4 cent reduction from the current year's rate. So the current year is 67 1/4. And then I know it's a little small on the right, but the 67 cents breaks out into a couple of branches. So on the bottom, that's debt service. And again, we didn't want to reduce that. That's committed to pay our debts, and it also preserves our future bond capacity. So for the 2026 bond, which you'll be able to engage on in the coming months. And then the top branch is operations and maintenance. So that funds the general fund, which is the city's biggest operating fund. That's where police, fire, parks, libraries, transportation, and public works, a lot of the services you think of as core services in the general fund. But further, the further breakout there is operations on the top, which is the general fund, and then capital, which is that pay-as-you-go portion of the tax rate at 7.25. So that's sort of how the 67 cents breaks out. And with that, I'm going to let you hear from Christy Lemon. Christy also works in the Fort Worth lab. She is the assistant director over the operating budget, and she'll go over just a bit more budget detail before we get to your questions, but we're like maybe more than halfway done.
Thank you. All right, good evening. Thanks again for being here. I'm just going to go through some of the details, and then we'll get right to your questions. So this is our total operating budget for next year's proposed. It's a little more than $3 billion. So that top row is the general fund. So that's probably what you're most familiar with. It funds like code compliance, police, fire, libraries, those kind of basic city services. And you'll see the growth there is just a little more than 4%. And we'll talk about how we used that growth in just a moment. And then you'll see some of the other funds there as well. The special revenue fund has a pretty significant increase, and that's because of the emergency medical services that we brought into the city. So formerly MedStar, now EMS under the city's umbrella. So that's why you see that big growth there. And then a little bit of change in other funds. We're going to go through them in a little bit more detail here. So this is the general fund budget. The top portion shows you what our revenue sources are. So you'll see that property tax and sales tax are our largest revenues for the general fund. And then we have a few other fees and kind of miscellaneous items. Those are relatively small in the scheme of things. So the big things that we typically focus on are the property tax and sales tax here. And then the bottom half is expenses. So this is for all city departments that are in the general fund. The key thing that you'll notice there is that the biggest portion is for salary and benefits. So people are really like one of the most expensive things at the city. And then you'll see that we reduced our general operations and maintenance budgets. So that's resulting from those 1% cuts that we talked about. We also took some discretionary cuts from various departments in order to reduce that tax rate a little bit. So that's what you're seeing there in the reduction on operations and maintenance. This is really explaining the drivers for how we spent that extra 4.5%. So we did have a little bit of growth in property tax values. And so this is where it went. So the biggest piece of that is for public safety. So 68% of that growth went right to public safety. So as you all may be aware, we have negotiations and contract agreements with the police and fire organizations. And so a portion of it went toward those pay raises that we're contractually obligated to. And then the other big chunk there is a subsidy for the Emergency Medical Services Fund. So the EMS fund will do medical billing to recover costs when they take folks in for an ambulance ride, but it doesn't fully cover the cost of the service. So we have allocated $20 million out of the general fund in a transfer over to that fund to fully fund that service. And then over time, as we continue to manage that service and look for efficiencies, find ways to do it hopefully in a less expensive way or be able to recover more through billing, then we can reduce that subsidy over time. So lots of plans for that, and we're just getting to know that line of service and work on those issues. The other thing that we funded in this year's budget is pay for performance. So that's basically pay raises for general employees, so not police or fire. The city has a performance-based raise program, so we don't do cost of living adjustments or anything like that. It's all based on individual employee performance. So we have about $10 million budgeted for that. And then as Christiane mentioned, we're currently doing a pay plan study. We compete for talent with lots of other little cities that surround us in the Metroplex. And then also for some of our jobs, we compete a lot with the private sector. So we have a number of hard to fill positions in the city. For example, engineers are one where it's very hard to hire engineers into our system. Sometimes the firms pay a lot more than we do or offer different incentives that we don't have in the public sector. So we're looking at pay structure for all city jobs to figure out if we're competitive or if we need to make adjustments. We don't have that data yet. We don't have the results of the study yet, but we know that there will be some things that need to be adjusted. So we've just reserved some money here to make those early adjustments. It will probably take us 4 or 5 years to fully implement that study because we have so many employees, so many job classifications. But we're reserving a little bit just to begin. And then we did put some additional money toward PAYGO. So that cash investment in our maintenance all around the city. So lots of lots of needs for maintenance. We're really consistently focused on that pay-go. We'll cover a few of the other funds. So enterprise funds in general operate like businesses. So if, for example, if you pay a parking meter or you drive into one of the city-owned parking garages, you'll pay a fee to park, and then that goes back into managing the fund. So these funds, generally the revenue that goes into them is used just to manage that particular service. So we have parking, we have airports, the stormwater utility, solid waste, and then I'm sure you all are familiar with the water and wastewater utility. So those are the big ones. The wastewater utility is our largest one, and you do see they have a big operating budget for this year. We'll talk about their capital in a minute as well. And as Christian stated earlier, they do serve as a regional utility. So this is not just for Fort Worth residents, but they have wholesale and retail customers in a larger footprint than the city. These are our special revenue funds. So the revenues that are generated for these purposes are specifically for these purposes. So one that you may be familiar with is the Crime Control and Prevention District Fund, or you see it sometimes as CCPD. So that's a half-cent sales tax. So we get revenue from sales tax when folks buy things in Fort Worth, and a half-cent of that sales tax goes to the police department for CCPD. We also have public events. So that's Convention Center Will Rogers, and then the EMS fund, which is the new one. So you'll see no history on that one, but the fund is budgeted this year at $89 million. $20 million of that is a subsidy from the general fund, and then they're expected to raise revenue for the rest of that service. And then we have environmental protection. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And then municipal golf and community tree planting. So those are our special revenue funds. This you may be really interested in. So this is a typical, what a typical homeowner might pay in this budget scenario. So the first line is a taxable home value. This is on average, it's kind of a conglomerate of home values from all of the different taxing districts that we're in, appraisal districts that we're in. And this home value has the homestead exemption applied to it already. So this is kind of our average home value. And under first column is the FY25 or the current year adopted budget, and then the second column is proposed. So under this scenario, the homeowner would pay $20 less in property taxes under the proposed budget. So seeing a little bit of reduction in that property tax rate. And then there are some fees, and some of the fees are increasing. So I'll go through those. So for stormwater, the proposed fee increase is about 35 cents per month. And that's really to be able to accelerate plans on a lot of the capital maintenance that's needed for our storm channels, storm drains, all of that. And then water, no increases on the water side. On the wastewater side, there is a little bit of an increase, so 64 cents per month on the wastewater charge. And then the solid waste charge is increasing $3 per month on average. Of course, it depends on the size of your cart and all that. We haven't increased solid waste, so your trash or recycling pickup, since 2003. So very, very long time we've been without a fee increase. So it is a $3 increase, but it's been a long time coming, and we need to increase that fee because we have some significant capital investment coming in the future. So our landfill is about 10 years away from being full. So we've got a plan for our next, wherever we're gonna haul our trash to. So the next one is the environmental fee. So the environmental fee covers a number of things, such as air quality, and then also any kind of hazardous waste cleanup. That team has also been really active in helping us clean up homeless camps around the city. And so part of this fee increase will be used to hire additional crews to help with that work. So that's been something that people have been excited about. So the total fee increase is $56 a year, or a little less than $5 per month per resident. And then when you consider the reduction in property tax, it equals about $3 per month per homeowner. So that's the impact of the budget. We'll talk for a moment about our capital improvement plan. So every year we do a new capital improvement plan. It's a 5-year plan and it's rolling. So you'll see this year we have some pretty big capital investment. It's really for two things. It's the convention center is the big one, and then also the water projects that Christiane spoke about. So those are very intensive capital projects that have been planned for a long time. So those are going to happen in FY26, and then you'll see things kind of taper off from there. As we go forward with a bond election, if the voters do approve bonds, then you'll see those roll into this 5-year capital improvement plan. So this doesn't include any future bond in this particular scenario. We'll talk for a minute about PAYGO. So this is, again, the cash that we use in our cash budget every year to do street maintenance and other types of maintenance. The top line is the Transportation and Public Works Department. So that's the department that takes care of all the street maintenance, potholes, all that. And this year we put additional funding toward that particular issue because there's been so much conversation around the city about condition of our streets. So the green bar is the proposed budget for next year. So you can see it's growing faster than the other ones. The other ones grew a little bit, and then we did throw a little bit of extra money toward the park department for some additional park maintenance as well. But the big chunk is going to street maintenance. All right, so this is the high-level overview. This is our total proposed budget for FY26. So it's almost 4.5 billion. So you'll see the operating is a little bit over 3 billion, and then the proposed capital investment is almost 1.4 billion. And we've been doing these meetings all around the city. We have a couple left. So if you have folks who weren't able to attend and you think they'd be really interested, encourage them to come either tomorrow night or Monday night to another meeting. They could also watch from home and then send in questions. So they can do it from the couch if that's more comfortable than coming out. We would love the input either way. And then, of course, we're building toward a vote of the City Council next week on Tuesday. So that's where we have the budget hearing scheduled, and then the vote on the budget adoption is scheduled for Tuesday. And with that, I think we have lots of time for questions. We're going to pass around the mic, okay? Do you want to? Oh, we haven't. Okay. Perfect. And I'm going to let Christiane help me with questions.
All right, I turned this one on. All right. Good evening. My name is Tempest Williams. I'm a local business owner of the Tempest Financial Group. This is my partner, Dr. Evelyn Lawson. I had a question about a line item on the income statement of the budget. I noticed that there's a line that said transfer out and other. Does that include sunk cost on any existing projects?
Let's see if we can. Here, yes. So there are transfers for a number of reasons. Here you'll see, for example, when we transfer money into the Emergency Medical Services Fund, that's gonna show as a transfer out of the general fund into that fund. There can be transfers for lots of different reasons. If you want to see more detail, we could definitely get that for you, and we'd be happy to share it. So,
thank you.
Yeah. All right. Other questions?
Good evening.
Hi.
What we did this year as a city, we basically insourced EMS. The EMS used to be contracted out. Now it's a city department. Mm-hmm. So net, what did that cost the city? Are we saving money, or is it costing us more money to insource EMS?
You want to take that one? Want me to take it? It's costing, yeah. So we're subsidizing it with the $20 million. It's a bigger conversation than just the dollar amount, though. It's about service levels and how fast an ambulance reaches you. So there was a lot of conversation in the community about dissatisfaction with the service as it was structured before. So what we're hoping to provide is a better level of care, and then over time be able to reduce costs where we can. So I think we don't totally know the answer yet. Is that fair?
We're starting with 20 million in the hole.
Yes. Yes.
That's right. Yep, that is the amount of the general fund subsidy to the new EMS fund. That's right. But she's right. I mean, I know that that fire and then the EMS group, as they really begin to operate, are looking for efficiencies and also looking for ways to begin to recover more revenue and maybe be more efficient. So we're really at the beginning.
Submitted questions.
Great.
What are plans for the Economic Development Initiatives Fund pertinent to East Fort Worth?
Do you know?
Say again. Nothing set yet. Nothing set yet.
Okay.
Yeah, the Economic Development Initiatives Fund is not itemized at the beginning of the budget year. It develops as deals develop. And so this budget includes a transfer out of the general fund to that initiatives fund, where we sort of keep the funding so that as economic development deals and agreements sort of begin to form. And so we don't know yet kind of what those deals will be in East Fort Worth.
Okay. I have two more.
Well, I can tell you very quickly, we have had the opportunity to meet with several developers, including one today. We will be referring those to our economic development group because that's what we're focused on in District 5 is growing economic development. So we are looking for those opportunities and we'll be working with our economic development group.
Okay. Another submitted question is, how is Fort Worth working to reduce dependency on federal grants?
Do you want to take that one, Dana?
What was the question again about deficiency?
How is Fort Worth working to reduce dependency on federal grants?
Yes, thank you. So one of the things that we're looking at is how we can, well, let me back up a minute. In the FY26 budget, and you all can correct me actually, the budget team knows this better than I do, we are shifting emergency management from reliance on federal grant funds to the general fund. So I think there were several staff that were shifted from federal grant dollars over to the general fund. Beyond that, we actually got word from HUD that our federal grant dollars are increasing slightly for FY26 compared to FY25. So we were not anticipating shifting any staff to the general fund for FY26. But we will certainly, so it was some good news that we received as well. So we will certainly keep an eye on that. And our neighborhood services director, Casey Thomas, is looking very closely and thinking about, as the budget is being considered by Congress for FY26, if there were any changes in direction, what would she be prioritizing and what would she recommend to City Council if we did need to supplant or supplement those dollars with general fund? And so she would be prepared to come forward with her recommendations on that. But for FY26, we weren't recommending any shifts along those lines, at least with respect to those dollars.
And then the last submitted question was, will use of AI be used consistently and or replace human employment?
Eventually, yes, the robots will take over. So, I mean, I know as much as you do about that question. I think what I'll say is in the Fort Worth Lab, part of our initiative is to look strategically forward. So we have a strategic foresight initiative, and the very first topic that we did kind of looking into the future was about AI, as you can imagine. And so that study looked like about 30 years into the future, and we like modeled a number of scenarios based on what could happen. And the goal of those kinds of thought exercises is to try to implement like the scenario that we want, right? And so I do think there are some jobs that will be more ripe for automation and AI supplemental use than others. You know, it won't be easy to like replace an engineer with AI, for instance, but maybe some of our clerical jobs eventually, there could be some AI supplement there, right? We're not at all there yet. Right now, the city is actually hiring its very first like, AI governance position in IT. So we're certainly starting to put some framework around AI and the use of AI in the city, making sure that we're compliant with like federal and state guidance that's coming out. And so again, that's another area where we're trying to keep up, but certainly moving really fast and early. But right now, like in this budget, there's no positions being eliminated, for instance, for like AI.
Other questions?
Okay, I'm coming.
Regarding Woodhaven specifically and the TIF 13, could you give us an idea, an update on the status of our TIF allocation, and how does that relate to the city budget, and what does the future of that look like?
So, TIF 13, we will be having a meeting in October. We have to make a decision about that TIF, and so there is you have a TIF board. I just got appointed to that TIF board, so we will notify you about the meeting in October because we'll be talking about projects then. But we're not going to trust me, the TIF is about at 22 to 24 million now. We are not going to let those dollars go to waste, okay? I promise you they will be spent for the residents in that community.
How does the city prioritize street maintenance, repaving, repair?
As in the priority order of the projects? Okay, I'm going to let Lane take that one. Lane is our assistant director over street and stormwater operations, and she's an expert.
I would not say I'm an expert in all things, but I have jumped around a good bit. So it's a little different depending upon what category of street you're talking about and what type of program you're talking about. Let's start with bond programs. Bond programs are for streets that need full, complete project reconstruction. Those are expensive projects, so we issue bonds for those. There's lots of different types of projects in the bond, and each type of project kind of has a different criteria, as it should, based on that type of project. So a sidewalk project wouldn't have the same prioritization criteria as a major arterial or a neighborhood street category. So major arterials will look at things like traffic and congestion and traffic volumes to help rank and prioritize. Neighborhood streets will look at other things, mainly with a heavy focus on condition. The other type of program that we prioritize and rank is our maintenance program. For the maintenance program, we've gotten more sophisticated recently. So we have a lot of really good data-driven tools that help us to make sure that we are being as cost-effective as possible with our maintenance dollars. So the one that explains best our prioritization for maintenance is our decision tree. And so in this decision tree, it'll have a branch for asphalt streets. And you look at the condition, you answer where it is in the condition scoring, then it asks you different questions on the branches. You know, what is the curb and gutter like? What is the distress? Is this certain type of distress over 30%? And this is all very engineering and very technical, right? Why the criteria is set the way it is for maintenance, because it determines what type of maintenance procedure is needed. And so we have that for that decision tree for asphalt, for concrete streets, and then for asphalt over concrete streets. That is the primary tool that we're using today. But as I said, we have developed that over the past couple of years. And so now we've gotten much more sophisticated about knowing how we can do more with less. And I'm really excited about where our pavement management is going in the city.
Told ya, expert. Mm-hmm. Here and here. Oh, for her. Oh, yeah.
Under the new bill, what is it, 840, where developers no longer have to do street surveys and the rest of that, and so builders will be building and traffic will get heavy. How is that going to affect the budget, or do you see that affecting the budget a lot?
I don't know that I'm the expert on that. Do one of y'all want to speak to that?
Jessica McCachran, Assistant City Manager. I think the answer is we will see potentially impacts of increased traffic, and the more traffic you put on a street, an aging street, it's going to eventually need maintenance. And whether it accelerates that maintenance need, I think we're waiting to be seen. Ultimately, all of that will have an impact on the budget. I mean, as street maintenance needs go up, it really will fall into TPW to figure out the repair, replacement, whatever treatment plan that is, and it will hit the budget eventually.
Hello, thank you for the presentations. My question is concerned with services on the east side. In the creation of the budget, is there a concern for, as you try to get businesses and corporations to move here, is there a concern for them moving to particular sides of town? For example, there are very few grocery stores here. And I would assume that, for example, if Publix wanted to come to Fort Worth, they would get to choose what side of town they wanted to be on. Is there a way to incentivize them to choose a particular area because that area really needs that service? So how's that concerned with the budget?
So clearly, and I'm just going to speak, and but when a business gets ready to move to an area, they look at certain criteria. They want to know income levels. They want to know the number of houses, those kinds of things. It is my job to get in there and work with our economic development team to try to get people to move here. We know, and I live on the east side, I live right down the street. We know we need a grocery store. Those are the kinds of things we're looking for, but we're also trying to bring more economic development in terms of restaurants and sit-down restaurants. So we will be working with our team at the city. I mean, a lot of the things we talked about for improvements in infrastructure, those types of things are things that we need to attract businesses here. So no, we don't get in a room and say, oh, this is a grocery store, let's put it on the west side. No, we are actively engaged in trying to find ways to bring businesses here to District 5.
I've never seen so many modest people in one room. I have to say for TP&W that they are dealing with 8,600 miles of roads in the city of Fort Worth, streets and roads. That's a lot of roads. Just think where you could go if you got in your car and drove 8,600 miles. You'd be way down the road. And our city council person is being a little modest because I know that she has taken the bull by the horns, and she had Maddie Parker and some of the city staff on a tour of East Fort Worth, looking at the inventory we have of available land to be sought upon, right? And I know she made an impression on them. They gave up half their day to come out and look at East Fort Worth, and that happened in the past couple of weeks. So I can tell you I just got through with 5 hours of City Hall on the zoning commission. And the predominant cases, we had 19 cases today, took us 5.5 hours. And in one case, we had 68 people showed up on one case to speak on it. 68 people wanted to testify on one case. So there's a lot of interest community-wide on growing and bringing people to Fort Worth and making them part of our tax base. There's no question about it. And predominantly, our District 5, District 8, and District 11 had the majority of cases today on these 19 cases. So people are looking at East Fort Worth. That is the districts in East Fort Worth. And it's interesting, a data center is coming. They bought 400 acres, and they're going to bring their data center to Fort Worth. And so there's a lot going on here that we don't hear about it until somebody picks it up on a news broadcast or something. But but it's in the background. The city's working very hard, and city staff's working very hard. And I just want to thank you all.
Hi, thank you, everyone, for your service. I saw that the property taxes is going to cut down this year. Lord, very big shout out for them. We don't want to pay more property taxes, but is that how we gonna balance the budget? You say that property taxes is the main income for the budget. So if we're gonna get less property tax, how you are planning to balance your budget? Are you gonna cut down somewhere, or are we getting taxes from somewhere else?
Yes, I can explain, and then you can jump in as well.
Sure.
So if you look at on the expense side here in the bottom half of the screen, the second line is operations and maintenance, and you'll see there's a reduction there. So part of that is that we asked departments to cut 1% of their budgets. That was $7 million we saved by cutting 1%. And then we cut some other things that we no longer needed as well. So I can just give you a couple of examples. These are not big ticket items, but when you add all of these up, we were able to make that significant cut. So one thing is that we consolidated a lot of city staff into City Hall. We used to be in many, many different buildings all around the city. So when we consolidated, we needed fewer printers. Our mileage costs went down because we weren't traveling to meet with each other in a bunch of different buildings. So we were able to make a lot of small cuts like that for things that are no longer needed. So that's a portion of it. Do you want to add? Is there anything else?
I'll add on the revenue side or the property tax side. The reason we are able to reduce the property tax rate is because our values still grew. So you're working from a growing base, and so you can apply a lower rate and still receive more revenue. And so the city could keep the tax rate flat and we'd get even more revenue. A 1/4 cent reduction is about $3 million in revenue. So we could have kept the 3 and just said, hey, we're keeping the tax rate flat. But we knew that, especially when you start to think about doing some fee and rate increases that were needed, that we really needed to look at that offset. And we have the sort of legislative authority even to raise the tax rate, and that wasn't even a scenario that our city manager asked us to look at. And so we're happy to offer the 1/4 cent reduction since our values were still growing, and we're still growing, like having that existing base grow. And then yes, in combination with some of the reductions that Christy mentioned, our budget is balanced right now for fiscal year 26. We do have to present a balanced budget. Does that help?
Yeah. How about new residentials, new neighborhoods? Are you encouraging that? Because the more houses, the more neighborhood, we're going to get more property taxes.
So the city looks at the mix of the residential and commercial tax base, and I would say that we'd like it to flip so that the commercial tax base is carrying more of the tax burden perhaps than the residential, but of course it's a balance. On new growth this year, we did see about, 2%, 2.5% growth in new development like you're talking about, so that does help.
Okay. Some of us are really curious about what is going on with construction at Randall Mill and Woodhaven Boulevard. There are, I don't know if this is streets or parks. There are some major equipment parked there and work going on. I don't know if this is the bridge, or what. We just want to know what it is.
Yeah. Say the intersection again.
Intersection of Randall Mill and Woodhaven.
Randall Mill and Woodhaven.
At Quanah Park, at Quanah Parker Park.
Do you know, Jeff?
We're crowdsourcing an answer, maybe?
Now, I'm not sure that Joel McElhaney, Assistant Director, Park and Recreation Department, we do have an interlocal with the county to repave Quanah Parker Park access road in the parking lot. And they've recently completed that construction. and we'll be striping that lot. I'm not sure if that's a project you're talking about. They would have had some large equipment out there to do the milling and paving, but I'm not sure. And that's in the area you described. Just not sure. Okay.
All right, other questions?
Okay. Well, lots of city staff here, so feel free if you have a more specific question or you just want to chat. I think we can stay a little longer. But other than that, I'll let the council member close us out. Thank you so much.
So I need to thank our amazing city staff for giving up their time and their energy to come here. All the city experts are here. You're members of our police department that keeps us safe. The chief is here. Commander Williams is here. Our NPO are here. And so I want to tell you the nice thing that they said this was the nicest group that they talked to. And this is also the biggest group on a weeknight. So I am grateful to you all for being concerned, because your questions, I work for you. And so your questions and your interests are my questions and my interest. And so please stay. If you were shy and didn't want to stand up in front of somebody and ask a question, please stay and ask your question, or reach out to Selena and Lisa and we will get an answer for you. But this is the way we make the city better. And young man, I love the fact that you ask about economic development on the east side. It is resident input and resident care that makes us powerful. And so this is on to making District 5 the greatest district in the city. So thank you all. Good night.